Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps, Books, Beverages, and Author Conversations. Today I am joined by Eliza Kennedy, University of Iowa and Harvard Law graduate. She's the author of I Take You and Do This For Me, and her newest novel, Lucky Night, will be released on March 25th. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you. I'm so excited to talk to you for many reasons. The University of Iowa plug is something very special to me, so
Excellent.
we'll have to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
But before we get into that, and before we talk about like Lucky Night, do you have a nightcap pairing for us?
I do. I've been thinking about it a lot. And as I'm sure we'll get into, the book is about a fire. So I don't have anything, particularly named, but I feel like a cocktail that has some smoky tea in it for that smoke flavor. Probably some whiskey or bourbon because it's a little bit stressful and you need to kind of like get the edge off. And then I'm thinking like kind of a maple syrup and lemon juice or honey and lemon juice for the combination of like sweetness and sort of bitter conflict that
Yeah,
the book is full of. So there you go. We'll figure
that's
out a name for it.
That's perfect. That's so much better than like what I had in mind. I just had so I immediately thought of the like only drink that I've ever had of that had like an actual flame on it.
Oh,
And it is at a restaurant in Tampa called Meat Market, and I don't even know the name of the drink, but it literally comes with like a lime that is on fire.
oh God.
And
Okay.
yes, it is very pretty, but that's what I thought.
Uh,
So I like yours a lot better.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about give us an overview of Lucky Night and what readers can expect.
Okay. Well, it is I suppose it's a kind of a romantic comedy thriller. And it takes place in a single hotel room on a single night with just two people. And their names are Nick and Jenny. And they have been having an affair for 6 years. Kind of a casual, low strings thing where they meet once a month or so, just for some sex and witty conversation and a kind of a break from their lives. So they meet this particular night at a very fancy, brand new hotel in Manhattan that where Nick has booked a room, and they think it's going to be a night like any other, and it starts out that way until a fire alarm goes off. And from that point forward, it becomes clear eventually that there is a fire in the hotel. They are told to shelter in place, and so they do, and they think, "We're just going to have to wait it out." But their relationship is not really built for this sort of stressful situation, and so very soon, the cracks kind of appear, and it's clear that they're very different people, and they have been keeping things from each other and from themselves for a long time. And so what happens is as the night proceeds and the rescue becomes keeps not happening, they really begin to finally talk for the first time. So there's a sense in which, although this may be the last night of their relationship and their lives, it's also kind of the first night they really get to know each other.
So it like gives me chills even just like hearing you talk about it
Thank
again.
you.
What was the inspiration for this story for Jenny and Nick?
Well, strangely enough, it was about 10 years ago, and I was lying on a bed in a hotel room. I was doing nothing illicit. I was actually there with my toddler, and I was desperately trying to get him to fall asleep. And he finally fell asleep, and I was lying next to him, and I couldn't move because he might wake up. And so I'm staring up at the ceiling, and I see the blinking smoke detector, and I think, what if there was a fire in this hotel? And, I thought, "Oh god, please no, he'll wake up and then it's all for naught." But then I was just I was lying there and I started thinking about it and it was, what would happen? And I had recently learned something that surprised me, which was if you're in a brand new building, like a high rise, at least in New York City, you're supposed to stay in your room if there's a fire because you're actually safer there than if you go out and you possibly face smoke and flames. So you're supposed to stay, but every human impulse would be, I have to get out of here. I have to leave. So there's this immediate tension. And then weirdly, I'd also read this other fascinating article about a missing couple in Australia. This couple had gone camping and disappeared, and no one knew where they were. But the twist was, uh, they were married to other people. They were having an affair, and no one knew about it until they disappeared. And I thought, like, what a terrible way to learn that someone was cheating on you because they're gone. So it was like those two things kind of melded together. And I thought, what if it was a couple having an affair, stuck in a place where they're not supposed to be, where they might either get busted because they get caught, or they don't make it out. And it just seemed like ripe for the kinds of like conflict that you need, but also humor and depending on where it ended up, romance or drama or, whatever might happen. So that was the start of it.
My goodness. That's like such a perfect blend of like your thought process. I mean, even when that came up in the book and they're like shelter in place, I was like, what?
Right, right.
Like, wait, why? Like, what? Why are we not getting out? What do we do?
Exactly, exactly. But then I also realized as I started writing it and I started developing these two characters, I realized like even that question kind of perfectly illuminated how different they are as people. Because Nick is this like confident master of the universe type, the kind of man who would never think that like a fire could hurt him. So of course, let's trust the process. Let's follow the rules. I'm sure it's all fine. Whereas Jenny, being kind of more insecure, also, I think a lot more guilty about what's going on, is immediately, we have to get out. Like, this is not good. This is, in some ways, I think underlying that is like, it's coming for us. Like karma is coming for us. So even from the very beginning, I was able to use it to illuminate who they were.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about your writing process for this specifically. Did you have like a set routine or did this kind of develop organically? What was your process like?
It was, well, it was, I could not write the book for about 10 years. Like, the toddler who fell asleep on the bed is now 15. So that
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
yeah. So I knew kind of right away what I wanted it to feel like, and that I wanted it to be this fixed time period and fixed place and very immediate, like, in the moment. But I could not for the life of me do it. And so the first few years, the first 6, 7 years, it was starting it with a burst of enthusiasm and writing every day for a week, and then just, like, abandoning it in despair and putting it away for months. And then but something kept drawing me back. And so finally about, 2 years ago, I went back to it again, and it worked. Like, I figured it out somehow, and, it was at a time when I didn't have another project. I like, once again, sort of turned back to this idea that I always loved, but I couldn't figure out. And, so I just wrote like crazy for 10 months, and it was so great. And then so, schedule-wise, it was, I get up very early, so I get, like, a couple of hours in, and then it was just, all day, every day. It was, exhausting, but I was at the point where I didn't I thought I had it, but it could have died at any time again, and so I had this, like, pressure. I have to keep going. I have to see if I can get it, and I didn't know till the very end. Like, it could have collapsed at any moment, so it's kinda stressful, much like the situation in the room.
Yes. Yeah, the situation in the room is very stressful. I think I was like talking out loud a couple of times. My husband was like, "What are you like? Is everything okay?" And I was just like, "This is just a very stressful situation that these characters are in." And he was like, oh, "Okay, just like making sure you're good."
It's actually, I mean, this sounds, like, twisted, but it's reassuring to hear that because it's so hard to know. It's the one thing it's so hard to know is the effect on the reader, and especially, would people buy this? Because if you didn't believe in the fire, it's always that suspension of disbelief, and if you didn't believe in the fire and you didn't believe in what these 2 people were doing in reaction to the fire, you'd be like, "This is dumb," you know? So it's nice to hear that I harmed you,
You
emotionally.
did, in the best way. Well, no, I mean, from the beginning, I was immediately intrigued by like, okay, what is we obviously from like the overview, we have an idea of who these people are, but we don't really know them as characters. Like, how are they here 6 years later? Like, what is really driving them, motivating them to keep up this relationship? But like, there's obviously some secrets and some underlying emotions that they both have. And to your point, they're very different people. So
Mhm.
I'm immediately intrigued by them as people and like their history and how we're here. And then you just put this very stressful situation, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, where is this going to go? I was like, I have to know. I have to know where this is going to go. So, what what was the most challenging aspect of this story for you writing it? Was it developing the characters? Was it a particular scene? Anything along those lines?
I do think I I had to get the characters, I had to get their voices down. And I made a lot of mistakes at first. They were, I have 2 people who are having an affair. That is not a good thing to be doing, And I don't they don't need to be lovable. I don't need to excuse that, but I do need to make it understandable and make them like more than that affair. So I think when I started out, they were kind of too Nick was a little too caustic. He was too much of a jerk. And Jenny was a little too goofy. And they were these sort of archetypes because I was too interested in them being different. And I had to like just make them more real. So that it took a long time. But the real challenge was the I suppose the structure of it. I start out with them simply talking. You don't know who they are. You don't even know who's talking at first. I don't even give you quotation marks, which was a choice that is probably controversial. Because I knew I wanted it to be like so immediate. And I didn't want the reader to know who was who yet. I wanted it to be a little like disconcerting and disorienting, and then, at a certain point, I switch from I think we start in Nick's point of view, and I switched to Jenny's, and that again was something I knew I wanted to do because I wanted to reflect just the utter immediacy of what was happening, and there's no pause, and but just, like, getting it right was really hard. It was just a matter of, like, where do I cut? I didn't want it to feel artificial,
Mhm.
So it had to be, like, weirdly natural even though what is happening, you're literally changing from the perspective of one person to the other, is far from natural, so it was definitely that.
That's so fascinating. No, I was so curious because I mean, even just like the stream of consciousness and the thought, and you're right. At the beginning, you're kind of like, who's talking? What's going on? I personally don't mind the not having quotations, but I guess I do know that the first time that I recall, or like the first book that I really remember reading that didn't have quotations, I was kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah, it was
But it doesn't
disorienting.
bother me. I guess I like had to get through that first one, and not even get through because I ended up really enjoying it.
Yeah,
But I know it can be controversial to some people that
yeah,
really.
yeah.
Um, do you have, I don't know if favorite is the right word, but is there like a favorite scene or a moment that you're particularly excited for readers to experience without maybe spoiling anything?
Let's see.
Because I'm going to try very hard in this conversation to not spoil the ending.
I know, but, I want people to be intrigued, and, let's see. Yeah, I know what it is, and I'm trying not to, there is, really, a moment of great tension somewhere close to the middle of the book, and Jenny and Nick are interrupted by a knock at the door. And that's kind of one of my favorite moments, and I knew I wanted to do it early on. I didn't know who it was, and I will not say, but, um, but I love, I love books that surprise me. And I think I set up a situation where you're pretty sure okay, one room, it's kind of real time, these two people. And so I loved the idea of suddenly making it so that you don't know what to expect.
I love it. Yes, that moment for sure. What about, this has been just on my mind this entire time, even when I first heard the title. So, when did you know or decide that it was going to be called Lucky Night?
Right away.
Really?
Right away. Yeah. I actually had a slightly different title. It was originally I'd called it Our Lucky Night.
Okay.
And then I was persuaded to drop that particular whatever it is article. Yeah, and I felt like it encapsulated the irony of
For sure.
what was going on because it's also the first night that they were intending to spend the full night together. It was before that it was always an hour here, an hour there. So they came into it feeling a certain way and feeling like um they were going to have a good time and they're wrong. So, yeah.
Very good. Oh no, I love it. I was curious. A part of me, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was like, I wonder if she knew this from the beginning, but I was like, but maybe not. Maybe it came out somewhere else because I love the irony with it. What do you ultimately, and maybe there are multiple things, what do you hope readers like take away from this story?
Um, you know, I I would love people to take away the idea of, I suppose, thinking about infidelity a little more broadly. All three of my books are about infidelity because I find it fascinating that that people do this terrible thing. That it's one of the most it's sort of the most universal crime there is, and you commit it against people that you love. And why do we do that? And I think it's so fascinating, and so it's what I always explore, but it also has this status, I think, is like the biggest relationship crime that you can commit, and it's such a it ends things for so many people, and it's so devastating. But I also think, that we don't think about it as what I think the real problem with it is, which is deception. That is the problem of cheating, is that you're not telling the truth about what you want and what you really lead. And I think it leads you, as this is like as the cheater, it leads you to do things that you probably never really wanted to do. And then as the person cheated upon, you are living in a world where secrets are being kept. So it's this incredibly corrosive thing, but I think that we're in a sense we all lie. We lie to the people we love, and it comes down to, like, I think, being afraid to show who we really are. And so the whole book, really, the underlying theme of it is deception, and it's about these two people who, after 6 years, are really kind of loaded down with deception because and they've ended up in this room, and I never want to excuse what they've done, but I want it to kind of be understandable. And yeah, so I would say we're so judgmental about infidelity, and rightly so, but we if we could, like, take a step back and think about it, I think there's, like, fascinating ways to think about just, like, how we love and how we know ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. And yeah, I mean, I think that that's like part of, and Nick and Jenny are so different too. So to like explore two people that are both committing sort of this same act against a, a significant other and everything like that, but like what really drove each of them, and to keep doing this too, like the years of that and the
Yeah,
weight of that for years and years and years, and exploring all of that in then one night and one intense, very stressful evening.
right, right.
Um, so you mentioned your previous works also explore infidelity. How does Lucky Night differ from those two?
I think. Well, in two ways. I think the way that I wrote it was different. The way what I'm talking about with the stream of consciousness and the switching the perspectives, it's I suppose kind of, you could say it's a more literary book because of the way that it's written. Um but other than that, it's really, I think it's been about, I think, 7 or 8 years since my last book, and this one contains just a lot more about what I've learned about life since then. In many ways, I feel like, um, like Jenny, who is an author character, I'm full of insecurity and low self-esteem, but I'm actually really, I'm proud of this book because I found a way to talk about the things that I've learned as a person in the world who has been married for a long time, who is surrounded by other people of my age who are married or getting divorced or starting new relationships. You get to a certain age and you're really kind of learning things about love and sex and building a life with another person, and then maybe kind of waking up one day and realizing that this is not where you thought you would be, but here you are, and how do you leave? And so, I was able to have my characters have some of the conversations that I'm having in my head, which I don't know, I feel like I've enjoyed just sort of finding a way to put my preoccupations in there.
Yeah, and no, it's just exploring like the human experience and
Yeah.
like all that that entails, which looks different for everybody, but there are some of these like common themes that we all in some way, shape, or form are like connected to, and exploring how that happens. That's so interesting. What books or authors have influenced you or inspired you over the years and with your writing?
I love books that, or I love to be entertained. I have a hard time with a book that would have like sort of no comedy, no humor in it whatsoever. So I love a mixture. Virginia Woolf is a huge influence on me. I kind of rip her off in, in this the way that, like Mrs. Dalloway is another book about a single day where she manages to sort of shift between dozens of different people in London and that point of view, and that's kind of what I was trying to replicate, but just the beauty of her language and also how you feel like a whole lifetime can be encapsulated in one person's an hour they spend walking down the street, and I just love that. So she's a huge influence. Um, there's another writer I love named Laura Kipnis, who wrote a book years ago called Against Love, which is this wonderful deconstruction of romantic love from sometimes from a Marxist perspective, sometimes just from a she's a wonderful writer, and she just makes you rethink why it is that we have all of these rules against cheating, and yet none of those rules seem to in any way stop anyone from doing it. We
Yeah,
have this, and it's a very lively book. So yeah, those are two.
I like
And
that. I like a book that just like
yes.
challenges your thinking, challenges your perspective a little bit, like gets you to, I don't know, either like ask questions that you've never really thought of before. Yeah, that sounds, I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah, it's so great. It's probably about 20 years old now, but also kind of timeless. What else? I'm a huge Bronte fan, especially like during the pandemic. I would reread those books over and over again. I just think they're, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights in particular, of course. And yeah, those are some of them.
Those are excellent, excellent recommendations. Okay, I have to talk a little bit about the fact that you went to University of Iowa.
Yes,
Was
okay.
that for undergrad, for
It was.
writers? Okay, very,
Yeah.
do you mind sharing like approximately one?
Oh, yeah, no, it was, wow. It was the early '90s that I was there.
I'm from Iowa originally. So, and I have a younger brother that's at the University of Iowa right now,
Huh?
but I'm a huge Hawkeye fan. So,
Oh,
the
yeah.
second I was like, the University of Iowa? Are you from the Midwest?
I am, yeah, I grew up outside Chicago, and, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but, I was going to study English somewhere. Everybody I knew was going to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I wanted to get away from all those people. And I went to Iowa City, and the minute I kind of got there, I was like, "This is my place," and I loved it. It
Yeah.
was such a great. It's such a great like oasis. Where are you from in Iowa?
So I'm from just outside of Cedar Rapids.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But long story, I used to spend at least once a week, if not twice a week, in Iowa City, like growing up for some things.
Oh,
So,
so cool. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
like I basically, I mean, I like practically lived on the University of Iowa campus when
Huh.
I was in like middle school and high school. And then for other reasons, didn't end up going to Iowa,
Huh.
and ended up going to the University of Florida instead. But like
Mm.
everyone knows that, I mean, I wear everything Iowa. And I mean, recently I was in a meeting and I had a like a Hawkeye ball cap on and a Iowa sweatshirt, and someone was like, is there a game today? And I was like, oh no, sorry, this is like what
You
I
just
own.
yeah.
Like, this is just what I have. But my brother is there right now too, so yeah, he works at the airliner. If
Oh my God, yes. Yes, it was there even back then. That's amazing. I haven't been back in a long time, and I just like don't go family sort of dispersed, so I don't go to the Midwest much anymore. But yeah, it was just a great place to kind of become an adult, you know?
yeah,
Like yeah, it was great.
yeah, I keep telling him, I'm like, you like don't rush it, just enjoy it, like
Yes.
enjoy the ride. And
Yeah,
I was a great place. So then you went to Harvard and
I
you
did.
actually served as a law clerk and worked in litigation.
I did, yeah, yeah. I didn't go straight through. I worked in
Okay.
Chicago for a while. I worked at a little publishing company, and then I worked at the MacArthur Foundation,
Okay.
which does the Genius Grants every year. So that was really fascinating. And then I went back to school, and yeah, I went to law school, thinking that it would be, kind of a great degree to have, and you can do a lot of different things with it, and it was wonderful. And yeah, I graduated. I worked for a judge for a year, and actually, I worked for the judge who had the Martha Stewart criminal trial.
Oh my goodness.
So I was the clerk during that trial, which was amazing. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and then I became a lawyer. And all of these things I didn't have the confidence to be a writer back then. I knew I wanted to, even at the University of Iowa. In fact, this is in the book. This is Jenny's Jenny's story. Totally lifted it. Um, I didn't have the confidence. I also think I didn't have much to say. And so I needed to go out into the world and live and work and fall in love and out and all of those things. And then I, finally got it. But being a lawyer it's just a wonderful way of learning about the world, like how the world works and how people think and how they reason and how they usually don't reason. And it's all just emotion and stuff like that.
That's so interesting. So when
Yeah.
did you like officially start writing that you were like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot?
Yes, that was let's see. It was I'd worked, I quit and had my son. And then I always wanted to write, and I didn't have the discipline, and it was coming time for me to get a job again. So suddenly I found the discipline. So that was like 2012, I think, is when I really sort of like hit on the idea for my first book and wrote it. Yeah, so it's been, what is that, 13 years, and it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just love that story. I feel like so many people could relate to it. So what would you say to an aspiring writer or someone who like you maybe like always knew they wanted to do it, but it's a very it is a very vulnerable thing. I
It
think
is,
there are a
yeah.
lot of people, I mean, I was just talking to someone recently about it, and they were like, about the self-confidence aspect of all of that. So what would your advice be?
I would say, I would say don't give up. Keep trying, but don't push it either. In some ways, I think I've found with almost everything I've written, including this book, um, you can't force it to happen. But if it's supposed to, it will in a weird way. So as long as you keep practicing, no matter what you're writing, I think you're going to gain skills. And then at some point, your ability to write is going to match up with the thing that you have to say. And, um, and it's going to work. And then you're going to have to keep trying and like revising and all of that and learning. That's the thing I think, and I do think I couldn't write the book when I had the idea because I wasn't actually good enough to write this book then. I needed that time to learn how to write it. So it's very frustrating. I would also recommend that they read Stephen King's book, which I think is called On
On
Writing.
writing?
It's amazing. Yeah,
It
it's
is.
just
It's so
such a
good.
yeah, both like very practical, but also inspirational in the way that he talks about how he did it. So,
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I really, really enjoyed that one. So, and just like even just like studying the craft of writing and
mhm,
like someone who's been so successful with their writing career,
yeah,
what their advice. So, very cool. No, I think that's great advice. And to your point, you have to live.
yeah,
So, like
yeah,
you have to live and we're also inspired by
yeah,
even in little ways by the real life
right,
experiences that we
right.
have or conversations. So,
Yeah. And,
well,
actually there's one more thing, which
yeah.
is read. Like, you have to read all the time. I think, that's how I got there, is I never would have if I hadn't just been a reader and try different things and even books that you think you might not like.
Yeah, that's so true. I know one thing when we initially started this podcast was like we we wanted to challenge ourselves to like read different authors and challenge each other with my co-host, challenge each other to read
Uh-huh.
different authors, to read different genres, not just to stick in one. Although if if that's all you can read and that's what gets you to read, then
Yeah,
I'm not gonna knock it.
absolutely.
But we really wanted to like intentionally challenge one another to explore and like find new authors. And then
Mhm.
I mean, Penguin's been awesome in helping us do that too
Oh,
and
good.
exposing us to so many different writers. So that's been amazing. With Lucky Night coming out on March 25th, do you have any events or other things planned right now?
I do have not too many events yet. I do have a reading. It's actually the night before the book comes out and it's at the Strand bookstore in New York City. I'm excited because my husband, who's also a writer, is going to read it with me. So we're going to take the two parts and sort of read it as a pair, which should be fun.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
I would
yeah.
love to be there. I wish
Yeah.
it was closer. That's
Yeah, I don't know,
amazing.
I don't know if they're gonna record it, but, hopefully someone will record it, a few clips, and we could put them online or something. I think it's gonna be fun. Although I will say, I said I wanted to be Nick, and my husband's gonna be Jenny because, like, why do we have to be, like, gender conformative at this point? And also, like, Nick has the better lines
This is
most of the time.
Oh my
So
goodness. Please record it.
okay,
Please.
yeah.
Someone send a couple of clips because I would love to see that. That'll be so much fun.
Yeah,
So, very cool. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation.
thank you. I have
Th-
loved it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for telling us all about Lucky Night. I can't wait for listeners to hear about this book, which will be available on March 25th. Thank you again,
Yes.
Eliza.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.